And we're back with more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. We're moving on to the Best Publisher of the Year 2023 award. And I'm going to get through these nominees and then we can get to talking about them. First off, Nintendo. Then Larian Studios. Capcom. Square Enix. And Bandai Namco. So if you have seen our Best Developer deliberations, this is going to sound kind of familiar. There are a few different nominees in this category. But we can go over Nintendo's release here real quick. They released, we didn't mention it in Best Developer category, but they also released Metroid Prime Remastered in Shadow Drop fashion very early in the year. Mm-hmm. They went on to release that Advance Wars reboot, which, everyone was looking forward to. Very hard game. In May, they released Tears of the Kingdom, this little Zelda game that is critically acclaimed, showing up on a lot of different awards nomination categories here. And then in summer they released Pikmin 4, and Everybody 1-2 Switch. WarioWare Move It was released in the fall. And then at a June Nintendo Direct, they announced Super Mario Bros. Wonder, a brand new 2D platforming Mario game, and Super Mario RPG Remake, which then came out in November. Mario Wonder came out in October, and during a September Nintendo Direct, the company announced and dropped F-Zero 99 out of thin air. This is probably one of the last years that we're going to see Nintendo give 100% to the Switch platform before they move on to the Super Nintendo Switch development. So this was a special year for Nintendo. They definitely deserve this nomination. Anyone else want to chime in on Nintendo's year as a publisher?
I think you laid it out pretty well. I mean, nice. They've just been really, they kind of laid all their cards on the table, I think, making this, I would say, their biggest year since 2017 for the Switch, when they released, at least 3 big tentpole releases. I mean, Mario Kart 8 was a re-release, and then, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. But Breath of the Wild, redefined open world games, and then I think they followed up this year by improving on that. They improved on 2D Mario, I would say, in the most dramatic fashion since Super Mario World, probably. Mm-hmm. So I think
it was a complete reinvention of 2D Mario. They threw the new Super Mario Bros. Equation out, and they said, let's make a new game with no rules, and it's delightful. Also, just from a publishing, you brought up Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as a launch year title. It also is alive and well in 2023 with the Booster Course Pass, which, I think they deserve mention. That deserves mention in this category for sure. Because Nintendo, boy, whoever did that, whoever pitched them on just porting MK8 to Switch, they deserve some sort of a money hat. Because this is the greatest coup in the history of the world. The game sold 8.5 million units on Wii U. It has gone on to sell over 57 million units on the Switch. And I know, there was some work required, but you have to believe it was a lot less effort than making a brand new kart game. But here we are, years later. It's the best-selling game on that platform, and it's still selling well. And people are still playing it, and it's really in the best condition it's ever been in. So I just think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is another feather in their cap in this year because of the Booster Course Pass. But yeah, that's Nintendo's year. Pretty dang sweet. But let's talk about a studio that self-published and took a big risk and won. Larian Studios. Who would like to chime in about Larian?
Yeah, I'll chime in for a second too. Unless David wants to go first. I think it's worth being said that a game that was in early access for so long, and that the studio had probably multiple offers, one which they came forward with and said Microsoft tried to, and still said no, when that would have gotten, the CEO more money, or just more money in general. And I think it takes a lot of restraint and self-respect to, in a world of buyouts, to be no, we're going to remain independent and do what we want to do and take our time with a game and publish it ourselves rather than be under Microsoft or Sony or somebody else. Not that that has any effect, but I think it takes a lot of like guts to do that in 2023 when a lot of studios are shuttering and people losing their jobs and we're getting this surplus of games, so many great games. To stay independent was probably a really hard decision for that studio to do, and they did it. And I think that by itself should lend itself to best publisher, just because they stayed where they were.
They give themselves so much time to make that game too. Just going into early access 2 years ago, and then just taking 2 years of feedback and making that game so much better. But yeah,
and spending 4 years before the early access period too, working on the game. Like,
right.
The great games like this don't get made hastily at all, or with deadlines that are driven by public company quarterly reports, right? When you get to stay private and when you stay, owned by your founders, you get this leeway if you have enough money. So props to them for managing their cash flow to get to this point, Greg, because some studios don't do well at that, and then they end up in a situation where they have to find a publisher.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people forget the business side of publishing. Larian did a very good job to make sure they could get the game out. And I think that's why they really shine in this category a lot. And I love companies that bet on themselves like that. David, go ahead. I think you had something to say.
That's really what I wanted to say. Like, on the business side, I think they're indisputably one of the best publishers of the year, which is why we're talking about them right now. Like, there are so many early access publishers and developers that either mismanage the money they get or just kind of release a game that ends up being a house of cards. I think that they, like you said, Asif, really took their time, invested their team resources, their monetary resources in all the right places. And I mean, Baldur's Gate, the original, came at a very foundational time. It was like the flip side of the coin. You had Diablo hack and slash on one side, and then Baldur's Gate, the reinvention of the CRPG, on the other. And I feel like Baldur's Gate 3 has reinvented that again. But for a lot of modern players and on modern systems, obviously. And I don't think that happens if they're not very careful and calculated about where their investments of all kinds go over the last several years.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to echo what Greg said. I think it takes like an incredible amount of courage to be faced with the prospect of having like Microsoft money. A lot of developers in the past have looked at that as stability. They're getting this influx of cash and it sort of takes the pressure off, and like, we don't have to fund ourselves. We have more funding. And we've seen what happens, not exclusively, but time and time again, we've seen studios that get acquired being split up or being shut down or being pieced out. We've even seen absolutely incredible games, like in terms of quality, not perform as well as expected. And then that leads to layoffs as well. So being able to like stick to your guns and bet your own money on something and stick with it and release it and then have that success, like that's how a studio can grow into like a titan in the industry without having to be attached to like a giant publisher.
Yep. And now they're kind of on the other side of it. They are going to be a pretty large publisher, So it's the other side of this. When you bet on yourself and you win, boy, does it feel good. And I'm really happy for them on I love this story. To me, like the publishing side of this Larian story is, I think, one of the stories of the year in gaming. And yeah, I'm happy to see that it worked out for them. But if no one else has any nice things to say about Larian Studios as a publisher, we can move on to the next nominee. But I wanted to give people another opportunity to give them their flowers, because they deserve them. Okay, on to the next one. Capcom. They as a publisher, they released Resident Evil 4 this year, Exoprimal, and Street Fighter 6. Would we count that Mega Man collection as part of their?
Yeah, they released a couple of remasters with the Mega Man collection and with Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, which is a game from last generation that comes up in cult conversations, but it's never really at the forefront of your mind. And kind of this is people's chance to kind of appreciate what a good game it was for the time.
Absolutely. So yeah, Capcom had a pretty busy year as a publisher and a developer. They were nominated in both categories here at the Shacknews Awards. Who would like to chat more about how great Capcom is?
David?
David? I feel like David is about to say something.
Yeah, I would like to. I think this is a banner year from them. A brand new Street Fighter, very well made. New Resident Evil. I mean, I think just Resident Evil in particular has been on a high since 2017. I don't think they've really missed yet. Not all of the releases have been from me, but they are. They've all sold well. They've all reviewed well. They just are not missing with these games, and Street Fighter's back in a big way, which is a big deal in the FGC and the esports scene in general. I think it's pretty cool to see.
Also, from a publisher standpoint, the way that they're playing the VR space is very smart. They're like, okay, Sony, you're going to write us a check. And in exchange, we're going to give you RE whatever in VR. I know they went with Village earlier this year, and kind of after the cutoff date for our awards this year, they released the RE4 VR mode for PSVR 2. I feel like Capcom has done a really good job of timing when they go console exclusive with different titles, right? We saw it with Monster Hunter World, and then that was years ago. But then we see how they handle the RE franchise, where RE4 is available almost everywhere you can play a video game, but they also found a way to get a little extra chunk of change from Sony with that. And then on the Street Fighter 6 standpoint, like just releasing that game in the condition it was in, making sure it was just materially better at launch, putting that money behind the Capcom Cup so that instantly you have one of the biggest fighting game esports in the world. I just think they really planned this year very well and executed damn near flawlessly. So a worthy nominee for sure in this category. If anyone has anything else they want to chime in about, you guys are more than welcome.
I mean, they've made 3 remakes of Resident Evil 2, which is great. I mean, in the original series, 3 was where it started to get a little stale, but they're still firing in all cylinders. Like, each one is better than the next. They learn more and more each time they do one of these remakes, and I hope they can keep the momentum going.
I have bad news for you, Greg. RE4 is the best Resident Evil.
RE5 remake. Oh no. How are they gonna make this better?
No, we're going in a splintered path here. It's either Code Veronica over here or 5. I don't know where they're headed. You know what? Dino Crisis. How about that? Just gonna throw that out there for you.
I think they should go there at some point. Why not?
Also worth noting, also, if you've said several times that you have to get to the end of Tears of the Kingdom to really appreciate some crazy late game stuff that happens. I would argue that you need to get to the end of Resident Evil 4 to see what happens there, because it sets the stage for some very interesting stuff ahead of this remake schedule.
Well, now there's this alternate path that they're creating with RE4. So you're right. Maybe RE5 remake rules all of a sudden. I don't know. I don't know where we're going, but I'm excited. And that's because they've done a really good job. They won Comeback of the Year here 5 years ago at the Shacknews Awards. And they've turned around their company in a big way where, 5-6 years ago, Capcom is an acquisition target. Now they're too big. No one's going to be able to buy them. And that's awesome, because I think we need independent quality publishers and developers like Capcom. And once again, I want to stress that the RE engine is very impressive, and what they're doing with it is really impressive too.
I know they've been on regular saying that they're working on the next one now, as the engine goes and stuff like that. So there's opportunity here for them to do it again on that end. I think it's been a great year for Capcom. I do hope that they take some of that confidence that they've had now and spread it into some of the other fighting game realm stuff. Street Fighter obviously setting the world on fire a bit on that end. We got more DLC coming and that kind of stuff too, so it can pretty much keep itself alive for a long period of time on the actual competitive scene outside of the Capcom Cup itself, just by releasing new characters. I mean, we still got Akuma coming next year and stuff like that, which will bring in a lot of folks. But yeah, I'm happy to see it. I hope that they bring back some other franchises. I mean, you got so many good ones. You got your Marvel vs. Capcom. You got your rival schools. You've got like there's just so much to build from. And since you have like this opportunity now, where you have like you're putting out crossplay, those kind of things. You have your own system in place too. With Battle Hub, you could apply to other games. This could be a new kind of like starting point for a big age for fighting games in general, led by Capcom in their division.
They should call up by Bob Iger and be like, "Hey, have you heard of this game Marvel vs. Capcom?
Like,
because boy, do we have a pitch for you." Yeah, I would love that. I think if they could leverage kind of like what they're doing, how they built on the RE remakes, if they can do that with Street Fighter 6, and that could get us to a high quality MVC game or other
imagine
fighting
you had
games.
a world tour mode and you could play as Avengers and Marvel characters and walk around as the Hulk destroying stuff, and then still play a fighting game. Like, it'd be wild.
I'm throwing my money at the screen. No, it's yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, they've set themselves up, I think, for another really impressive decade of game releases. So yeah, one of the big announcements they showed at the Game Awards was that Monster Hunter Wilds, I believe is what it's called. And
Wilds, plural.
Yeah, it looks neat. And I kind of took a few games off of Monster Hunter, and this one I'm like, oh boy. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me right back in. So yeah, I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from Capcom as a publisher for many years to come, and that's a good thing. But on to the next nominee, Square Enix.
Square Enix had a really good year.
Go for it, Ozzy. Let us know.
Well, they released Final Fantasy 16, one of the big PlayStation 5 exclusives for the year. They released something on just about every platform imaginable. Octopath Traveler 2 is another one of the best games of the year. They released the Live Live port on PC, the Power Wash Simulator port on Switch. One of the best remakes of the year was Star Ocean. They released Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, one of the best mobile games of the year. And they're getting into the indie space with games like Little Goody Two Shoes, which is something that we kind of overlooked, but like Square Enix is kind of seeing the way that other publishers like EA are going and looking at smaller devs and going, what if we prop these people up? So I like where they're going. I like some of their more overlooked gems like Theater Bar, Final Bar Line. There's good stuff that Square Enix releases that kind of just flies under the radar, and that's one of the things I really like about them.
Speaking of one of them, real quick, Foam Stars was announced this year by Square Enix, and that was one of the.
And it looks, I swear.
It's just one of the stranger things I've seen come out of that publisher in a while.
That's going to be a hell of a 2024 conversation.
So, like, just to add to that, hey, this is the diverse offerings that they have at their publisher. I agree. They did hit every platform, a lot of their IP. It was a very good year for them. Sorry, TJ, you were about to say something?
Yeah, like, it's one thing that we didn't even bring up was Final Fantasy XIV is coming to Xbox now. And then Square Enix has plans to bring more of their games over to Xbox in the future. Like, typically, they've been mostly PC and PlayStation, and now they're expanding outward and making sure that everybody gets to play. And I think it's worth noting that the new president of Square Enix is a G. Like, that guy is. Every time I hear that guy talk, I feel the passion in him that we haven't. Because let's look at last year. Square Enix was on the struggle bus last year. Like, they mismanaged. They tried to, they brought up the NFT conversation, pissed everybody off, backed away quickly, ended up in a situation where some of their games didn't sell well, sold off Crystal Dynamics and several other studios, and it was 2022 was a bad year for Square Enix, and this new president this year, they did launch Forspoken this year, so it hasn't been perfect, but I feel like under this new president, under the directions that they've been going since, they've kind of redeemed themselves this year with a great catalog of retro style RPGs, new style RPGs, games on every platform, like Ozzy said, and just like a passion that I haven't felt out of that company for a little bit.
Kiryu-san's first impression will always resonate with me, where he showed up to that Final Fantasy 16 event in June, and he opened that keynote with, "I was a Dragon Quest kid." And I was like, "That's funny. That's a great way to start."
I like this guy.
I also do find it funny that they have a studio at their company called Creative Business Unit 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, that is just the... I don't know. It's just, every time I see that logo, I laugh. But yeah, they did have an awesome year. And they're set up for another really good year with the FF7... What the hell is it called?
Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth.
Rebirth. Thank you. Yes, Rebirth is the next Final Fantasy 7 game.
Yeah, they got the Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, and they've got the Final Fantasy 14 expansion on its way.
Yeah.
We kind of glossed over FF16 though. Like, FF16 is kind of a evolution of that franchise too, right? Like, it's quite different than what we've seen in the past.
Much more focus on action.
Yeah. But like also like it tells a pretty damn good story as well. Like they certainly do focus the efforts along, like they've said over and over again, this is Clive's story. It's always going to be Clive's story. The DLC is also going to be Clive's story. But like there's something to be said about attaching your narrative so strongly around like a certain concept and sticking with it and fleshing it out to the degree that they have. I think Clive is super fun to play in Final Fantasy 16. And I also happen to think that the characters that help him along the way are really strong categories in our NPC vote.
Yep. So pretty solid year by Square Enix, and set up for another one. And yeah, like you said, I think everyone should consider taking money from Xbox to release their games on Xbox. Don't go full Xbox. But, Microsoft money, though. They take it at banks. They're not going to turn away the Microsoft money. So I like seeing, just personally, I just like seeing games on more platforms. And what Square is doing, we kind of glossed over Octopath Traveler too, but like to have FF16 and Octopath 2 in the same year, it feels like you're serving both fan bases who may like your traditional turn-based sprite style versus that like big budget action RPG that Final Fantasy is kind of turning into.
Yeah, if you miss the old way, the old Final Fantasy games, Octopath is the way to go. That's a phenomenal tribute to the old Final Fantasy games with its own incredible story.
And boy, are we going to talk about it in the best music category. But yeah, the hell of a year, Square Enix. Stacked category, as always, here at the Shacknews Awards. Our last nominee, Bandai Namco, I'd say the biggest release of the year for them was Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon. I think that's the right name. But
they also started the year really strong with One Piece Odyssey, which I didn't have a lot of high hopes for, but when I played it, I was like, this is a Dragon Quest game. It feels like a really fun like Dragon Quest tribute. I loved One Piece Odyssey. It's like one of the best RPGs this year.
So yeah, anyone else want to chime in on Bandai Namco? I know that like we've been watching them drop trailers for Tekken 8 all year, but we can't really include Tekken 8 in this year's nomination. But it is something to note that we basically drop everything every time a Tekken 8 trailer shows up because the game looks amazing. Tekken 7 was in an amazing place as an esport. So this transition year has been something to watch at the very least.
We're going to be talking more about Bandai Namco next year with Tekken and with some of the other games they've got dropping, including new Dragon Ball game that got announced during the Game Awards. And they're bringing that Pac-Man Battle Royale that was on Apple Arcade. They're bringing that to consoles. So I'm excited to see that.
Okay. So like Pac-Man 99 died on Switch this year, but it may come back to life in a new form.
It won't be exactly Pac-Man 99, but it'll be something similar.
I'm
sure
it
was like Pac-Man Battle Tunnel or something like that. I forget the name off the top of my head.
Anytime a game is made available on a platform other than Apple Arcade, we should all celebrate like it's the end of Return of the Jedi. Because holy crap. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, another worthy nomination. Anyone else want to chime in on Bandai Namco before we get voting? Or should we get voting? We're going to get voting. Sweet. I'm going to start with you, Denny. Who you got? Best publisher. It's a tough one.
Well, because I passed on the dev end last deliberation, I'm definitely going to go with Capcom on publisher for this year. I think that bringing back the Street Fighter the way that they did, and then knocking it out of the park with Resident Evil 4, they set themselves in a really good position to basically hit a new golden age right now.
It's been an amazing, just watching them for the last 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps getting better and better and better, and that's awesome. And I hope that continues. David.
I'm going with Larian.
Donovan.
I'm going with Nintendo.
Interesting. I'm gonna wait. Greg.
Larian.
TJ.
Squeenix.
Ozzy.
I'm also going to say Square Enix.
Bill.
Even though I don't know which way you're voting, you're kind of won me over with that whole little guy thing, betting on yourself. So I'm going to go Larian.
Oh. Okay. Give me 1 second here. I just screwed up my spreadsheet. Sam.
Yeah, much like Bill, you won me over with the betting on yourself, turning down Microsoft money and going, you know what, we can do this. Larian Studios.
Steve. Host of
Nintendo.
the Steve Tendo Show. This man votes down party lines.
If Capcom gave me Mega Man 12, I probably would have gone with Capcom, but Mega Man 11 was so bad for me that I cannot do it yet.
You're still hurting from Mega Man 11. I feel
am.
you. When they make me president of Nintendo of America, Steve, I will install you as the new Mario ambassador and the voice of Mario.
I'll take it.
But yeah, I'm gonna vote for Larian for everything that we said. I think they. I love rooting for the little guy in general, and I know that they're still a very large company, but we're talking about them telling a $1 trillion company that we don't need your money, we're good here. I think that deserves a lot of praise, and they killed it. And it's important to note that they took their time to make the game, and I don't think we see that from. And I think the studios and the publishers that we listed here, they all take time. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom was not rushed; it was delayed. I think Square Enix, they tell us, hey, this game's gonna come out then, and then it usually does. But yeah, I think Larian, with the way that they developed the game through early access, how communicative they were with their community the whole time, and yeah, on the other side, the way that they continue to support the game, it's awesome. Amazing year for Larian Studios. So they have won, despite some other solid votes. Nintendo had a great year. Nintendo is a very good publisher, just kind of period, end of story. And they have better years and worse years, but this kind of speaks to the power of releasing one really good game and how it can change how people. You've seen the dev commentary on this, this win for Larian Studios this year, the success of Baldur's Gate 3 is what I'm talking about, is a win for a lot of small studios out there who bet on themselves. So congratulations, Larian Studios. You folks know how to do it for Shacknews. Congratulations to Larian Studios. You are our best publisher of the year 2022 here at the Shacknews Awards.